Test, test, test. How nigh, brown cow? Unique, New York. Diction is done with the tip of the tongue and the T. I am the very model of a singularitarian. I'm combination transhuman and mortalistic stropian, aggressively unchanging all my body's biochemistry, because my body's heritage is obsolete genetically. An angry man. There is my story. The bitter rancor of Achilles, prince of the house of Peleus, which brought 1,000 troubles upon the Achaean host. Many a strong soul it sent down to Hades, and left... Oh no. Who did it leave? A prey to dogs and carrion birds as the will of God moved on to fulfillment. It's a mystery to everybody. Test, 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 test. We are doing some basic tech checks, because I had to restart the computer, which is the worst thing to do right before the stream. But it looks like the microphone is up. Looking at the webcam, we're gonna tweak that. Camera control, focus manual, exposure manual. Focus! Focus! We need a little bit less. Can we add more light? There we go. Okay, so we got more light on the webcam. Awesome. That is really bright for my eyes. Can we take that down a notch? Okay. Test, 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 test. Okay, we're going to lower that slightly. Test, test, test. Okay. Great, 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 great. I think we are good. NK Art says, howdy, Joe. I enjoyed today's video. Thank you, NK Arts. We are setting up the stream. Normally, we would have some pre-stream music, but we don't want to risk these Moby Dick streams getting copyright struck and taken down on the VODs. Since it's a lot of work to read Moby Dick out loud. And I want people to be able to enjoy them. So, yeah. Oh, did I add last week's stream to the Moby Dick playlist? Let's look at that real quick. Playlists, Moby Dick Weekly. We have 9 videos in there. And, yeah, Cytology. Cytology made it. Okay, great, great, great. Okay. Fantastic. Okay. So, yeah, this stream is also going to be... Whoops. Save changes. Live reactions, slow mode. Getting all this set up. Welcome, Odysseus child. Glad you could join us. Gusty Gale says, I'm focusing, I'm focusing. Isaiah Williams says, Joe, I'm going to finish the episode and be back later. Yeah, no rush, no rush. We are just getting everything kind of set up for the time being. Big Papa House says, evening, Joe. Happy to catch another, even though we missed a lot of the story. Yeah, okay, so you missed 6 weeks of Moby Dick. It's later that day. It's like the apartment 26. What is that? Newspaper comic apartment. What is it? Apartment. Is it apartment 3G? Yeah. Created by Nicholas P. Dallas with art by Alex Kotsky. The strip began 1961. Initially distributed by Publisher Syndicate, which later merged with the Kingfisher Syndicate in 1988. Yeah, because there was somebody who was doing this great blog where they reported on Apartment 3G, which is like the slowest comic in the newspaper. And the guy mentioned in one of the blog posts, he's like, yeah, I ran into somebody I knew back in college at this coffee shop. And they're like, what are you up to these days? It's like, oh, I'm doing a blog about Apartment 3G and other newspaper comics. The person goes, Apartment 3G? I haven't read that since college. What's going on in that these days? And he's like, okay, so it's later that afternoon. And it's just like... It's just years to get through, like, one scene. It's wild. It's wild. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Do we have Discord set up properly? Discord is set up. Okay. Before we start reading Moby Dick, Art Omelet says the stream calendar on your website has a lot of blank days. Let me go check on that. There was some problems with the stream calendar. Oh boy. Yeah, you're right. Okay. There's more problems with the stream calendar than I thought. Okay. I'm gonna have to... Yeah, I'm gonna have to fix that. That's not right. Okay. So the problem is, I tried to take off one Monday event, and it seems to have, like, taken off all of them. Now that you're pointing that out. So, there's no stream tonight, apparently. Okay. So, I need to remove the Monday the 17th one, because Quinn has a show. Delete this event only. Okay. So, let's see if I refresh this now. Reload. Okay. We have fixed our Monday problems there. Cool. Yeah, so let me link Quinn's Pride or Die show. That's going to be on Monday the 17th. So there's no stream Monday the 17th, so that y'all can go out and see Quinn's Pride or Die show here in Nashville at Dark Matter. Quinn is organizing the whole event, and there's several musicians playing, including Quinn. Should be a good time. Posting a link in the Discord chat as well for any of y'all who might be in the Nashville area. Okay, other calendar-related news. I was hoping to have Don't Panic Flip, George Fisher, in studio as a guest this weekend. His travel plans have changed. He is unfortunately not going to be able to stay over in Nashville. You know what? I've known George for years. We'll have him on another time. It's, I'm deeply disappointed that I can't make that happen for you guys. But at the same time, you know, travel is always a nightmare of logistics and chaos. And, you know, so these things happen. So yeah, safe travels to George and Jay-Z on their way home, even though they can't make it through Nashville. We will do that some other time. Maybe I'll get out there to Fort Collins or wherever he is, somewhere in Colorado. Maybe it's a different friend I have in Fort Collins. He's somewhere out there. So somewhere out by Denver. Maybe I'll get out to Denver sometime and stream from his place. We'll see. But anyway, on the plus side, that means I don't need to frantically finish moving all the boxes out of my daughter's room that we were going to use as a guest room this upcoming, like tomorrow. So it's slightly easier on me on that way. But yeah, I was really looking forward to having them over. And I know I mentioned to y'all that that was an upcoming stream that we were going to do together. So sorry about that. Okay. Let's see. What are we going to do? Pepper Basage says, hey, Joe, I want to say to pick up a copy of Moby Dick. I wanted to see how the whales in the book compare to what we know now about whales compared to then. Yes, that kind of makes sense to me. Just as a reminder, tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. This is a viewer-supported stream. I am going to be doing some super grindy work, mining this out over here. Quick update for anybody who got deeply invested in the iPad stuff last night. I'm sorry. But, yeah. I worked on that more today after I got the episode uploaded. And it is not ready for prime time. Maybe when iPadOS Beta 2 comes out, it will be. And maybe it's that I have, like, one of the oldest iPads that can possibly run that calculator. But it is not there. It is not there yet to do what I wanted to do on stream in a fun and exciting way for y'all. So yeah, I am apologize for wasting so much time on it last night. I really thought I could get it working and it would be amazing. And you know what? It's beta software. Maybe I still can, but we're gonna back burner that for a while. That is something we're gonna come back to. It's not gonna keep trying to hammer that nail when clearly it's not the right time. So that's fine. That's fine. Okay, let's see what else. Moving on. Granite. Did I have a granite for pearl box around here? I feel like I did, but maybe I've already filled it and sent it away. Well, here's some grant. We'll just combine that with that. Yeah, but whatever. Anyway, I'm down here in slot 9, putting the hot in the hot bar. We're $20 away from our first face camera expansion milestone. We are about to be reading Moby Dick. Professor Red Fox, I actually have come up with the perfect argument, and it's going to make Cleo actually angry. It's going to legitimately upset Cleo. But Cleo is one of the few people on the server I can legitimately upset without serious long-term repercussions. So I think that's going to be okay. I think it's going to be okay. Oh, also Doc is going to... I think part of what'll make it okay also is that my argument is designed to also infuriate Doc. Doc will be angry about my argument, but it is legitimately the best possible defense of Doc, and he's gonna see that Cleo is angrier about it. They'll both be angry. It's a really strong argument. I have thought a lot about it, and it's it's the sort of thing that people... I think it'll be a little bit divisive among the viewers, maybe. But it's logically sound and deeply frustrating. It's... I can tell... If it was anybody other than Cleo and Doc, I'd be in real trouble here. I could not make this argument safely with other people. But yeah, no, this is the sort of thing that, like, anything that makes me laugh this much is usually more trouble than it's worth. Open Tanyao says, when are we going to hear the argument when the episode goes out? Because y'all will warn them. Y'all... I don't want Cleo to hear this from anybody but me. Yeah. Basically, it's a deep dive into Doc's psyche in a way that justifies his actions as internally, ethically self-consistent. It is not an insanity plea, but NK Art says you're gonna defend him by doing the biggest roast. It's kind of along those lines. It is basically Doc's actions are defensible because of how Doc approaches certain classes of problems. And then I'm going to describe certain classes of problems he's approached recently. And explain how this is basically the same thing. And how big of a peanut gallery are we going to have? I don't know. Honestly, I don't... NK Art says, how big of a peanut gallery are you going to have? Because I want the call to explode. I honestly think everybody else will go completely dead quiet. I think a lot of the other hermits will be like, I can't put this in my episode. Like I said, if it was anybody other than Doc and Cleo, I don't think I could include this. I don't think I could do what I'm going to do. Oh, it's... We're pushing the boundaries of creativity here on the Hermitcraft server. Like when professors from Australia want to interview us to talk about our emergent improvisational media. This is the sort of thing where I'm going to be asked later, did you warn them about this? If I told either of them, I think they'd be like, that's gonna cause problems for people. You can't do that. It's like, no, that's... Because the thing is, it's 100% true. This is gonna be a psychological breakdown of how Doc responds to things. Yeah, if the first thing that you post in a stream is test, you're gonna be banned. Test successful, you were banned. This is basically gonna be me justifying Doc's behavior via very uncomfortable truths. Yeah, I'm gonna be Doc's lawyer. But yeah, Toxic Litter, we're talking about Doc killing Cleo's pig. And I'm going to explain that this is completely consistent with Doc's behavior. And that anybody who is a true friend to Doc would understand what he was trying to communicate here and why. It's basically a I'm going to completely justify Doc's otherwise immoral actions by explaining how Doc engages with other people in a way that will infuriate Cleo because I'm correct and infuriate Doc because I don't think he wants to accept this about himself. And all of the other hermits will be like, guys, this is maybe something we should have talked about off camera. Like, I genuinely think the other hermits will just go dead silent when this happens. I don't expect that B-dubs will be jumping, like, or if B-dubs does jump in, it'll be to deflect. Doc picked the precisely correct attorney for him, because I have the only possible... I've thought about this, so there's only one defense for Doc's actions here. And it's that they're completely consistent with Doc's actions forever. Augusty Gale says, hopefully no feelings will be hurt. That's not really a priority here. Once again, if this was anybody other than Doc and Cleo, I would not feel comfortable moving forward with this as aggressively as I plan to. Because they can both have their feelings hurt. Like I said, I don't think Cleo's feelings will be hurt. I think Doc's feelings will be hurt. I think... Because here's the thing, is Doc believes he completely acted rationally in killing Cleo's pig. And I'm going to explain why he believes that. And I'm going to give examples of other things he's done recently. And it's going to infuriate Cleo because I'm not wrong. And it's going to infuriate Doc because I don't think he understands this about himself fully. It's going to be amazing. This is... Yeah, there's going to be psychic damage... A lot of psychic damage rolls. I don't know when this is going down, but I'm prepared. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. Doc must be free no matter what the cost, writes Ghost. Exactly. Exactly. I am 100% committed to defending my client, whether he likes it or not. because Lady Vaporeon says, when Doc chose you as his lawyer, I knew he made both the best and worst choice at the same time. As we say here in Nashville, porque no los dos. But yeah, I think we're gonna have somebody say, I'm not sure if this is funny anymore. Should we stop recording? That's how you can tell you're doing a good job of explaining somebody's psychological profile. And to me, this is where some people have different ideas of what is and isn't performance art. This, to me, is like the best that Hermitcraft can be. And other people will be horrified. When you're right, you're right. See, that's the thing, is art should present truths in an uncomfortable way that challenges us to be better. And that's what we're about to do. Welcome, Skewbert. Okay. So, Dactar Goofy says, aren't you giving away your defense strategy before the hearing? I'm giving my strategy away, but I'm not telling you the examples I'm going to use. Also, don't snitch. Becca says, did I build that? This beacon? Yes. That beacon? Yes. This second beacon? Yes. This other beacon over here? Yes. This pumpkin? Yes. That was naturally generated terrain. Naturally generated terrain. That tower? Naturally occurring. This line? I built that. Those roads? Yep, that was me. I really know how to bring home the beacons. Anyway, so if you enjoy me having the time to think through how to handle these sorts of scenarios, just as a reminder, tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. I wouldn't be able to be available to record things like this sort of courtroom drama if I was working a day job. And y'all's support is what enables me to do that. The YouTube videos don't really generate much, if any, revenue. So it's really the people who tip on the streams that make the YouTube videos possible. Neon says, I'm so sad this won't be live streamed. No, this won't be live streamed. I will do my best to preserve anything that's stricken from the record. If somebody says, whoa, we can't include that in our videos, I want to at least include them saying that after the cut. I'm gonna do my best to preserve as much of this as possible. Because, yeah, I would prefer this was live streamed too, so that nobody could chicken out. I don't know who the jurors are. I'm not in charge of jury selection. I guess, you know, is it funny if we do jury interviews and we each get to reject some jurors? Madam Mayhem says, this whole thing has a very Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come moment. Yeah, there's a great video of this economist talking to a business school about why that movie did more damage to the American economy and small business planning than any other singular work of culture or media in the last several decades. And I love that movie. But, you know, I've also, you know, streamed for several hours last night and made way less than I would have made as a web developer in 1 hour. So I'm maybe not the best judge of these things. Once again, tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. Oh, it's fine. Yeah. Dun 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 dun. Dang it, I forgot to stop and drop off blocks. Bo Wolf says, Joe, no small business advisors, business cards anytime soon. Well, I mean, I do consulting work for people sometimes about their businesses. Like, if somebody's like, if somebody stops by the stream and is like, hey, do you have any advice for a streamer starting out? I'm happy to share it on the stream. But if they're like, hey, could you talk to me privately about that? Or about my particular plan? I'm like, well, I do have consulting rates. And I will, like, legitimately try to help you do the best you can. So I don't have, like, a special business card for that. That's just kind of one of the services I offer. In the same way that, like, you know, if somebody asks for me to, like, make a personal appearance, we can talk about that. That's not, like, something I have a separate personal appearance business card for. Amanda Wolf says, since B-Dubs is setting up, like, a TV show court, will there even be a jury? Yeah, a lot of those don't have a jury. They just have judge, judy, and executioner. What? That was not the thing I was going for here. Height. Elevate. Elevate. Bum, bum, ba, da, da. Okay. Hey, we got our first tip of the stream rolling in from Alexandria for 25, who says, let's make that trial a real show. Hopefully most of it will make it to the screen. Haha. Stream tip. Here we go. Please direct your attention to slot 9 where I'm putting the hot in the hot bar so I can say, howdy y'all, Grow Hills here, expanding as I always do in Nashville, Tennessee. D to D to D. D to D to D. D D. And then we also got a tip from Mirror Muse for 10 who says, for a tie and a briefcase full of bourbon. That puts us now 5 away from the next face camera expansion milestone. Tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. Yeah. Somebody the other day was like, are you going to show up and be like, oh, I'm just a simple country lawyer? I'm like, no. You know, I'm like one of the only hermits that actually, like, legitimately lives in a city. Like, I mean, even the hermits that, like, live, like, quote-unquote, like, in London are on, like, the suburban outskirts. Like, whereas it's like, I actually, yeah, you know, live in a real city. I mean, I'm not sure, like, I'm pretty sure that the Arizona dads don't live, like, in downtown Phoenix or whatever. Like, because there are real cities in Arizona, but I don't think they, like, live in them. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure that the Canadian islands have much. I mean, they probably have some proper cities, but I don't get the impression that Gem lives in a proper city. Pearl might. Does Pearl live in a proper city? Who are the other urban hermits? Are there other? There must be some urban hermits. But, like, when Corrales posts a picture of his backyard and stuff, it's like, that is not a city. Jevon's fairly urban. Okay. I can accept that. That's probably true. Dayton is not urban, says Ariathalium. Yeah, how does Dayton compare to Nashville? Like, Nashville is legitimately a real city. And I actually live here. I don't live out in Williamson County or Rutherford County. I live in Davidson County. And not, like, on the outskirts either. Ooh. It's urban enough not to be considered a rural town. Riathalium says Dayton is a suburban offshoot of an actual city. Ronnie says Dayton is kind of massive, but also super suburban. Kimberly, Dr. Goofy says, doxing yourself? Well, the thing is, like, if you live in a major city, telling people that you live in a major city just narrows it down by, like, to 500,000 to 800,000 people, right? That's not really that narrow. You know, if I said, like, oh, yeah, I live, you know, I live out in the country, just outside Swanee, Tennessee, that would really be narrowing it down. Audit They says, I don't care if people know the city I live in, because there are millions of people here. Alpacatastic says, one of the least hermit-like hermits. I don't think you're wrong on that. Like, it's the sort of thing, like, remember when I said I needed to buy shoes because I had, like, I was wearing holes in my old ones, and my project manager said that, like, I should not... I was, like, complaining about knee problems. I was like, my knees are starting to hurt. I should probably buy shoes soon. And just, like, go buy shoes. And I'm like, Rrr. Yeah, so I went, like, it's one of those things, like, yeah, I went shoe shopping, and, you know, as I'm walking back from the shoe shop, there's this guy I know who runs construction crews, and he's just hanging out on the patio of this place I'm walking past. I'm like, oh, hey, what's up? He's like, oh, you know, just got done for the day. What are you up to? Oh, I'm like, oh, I just bought shoes, blah, blah, blah. It's like, even though, like, yeah, I live in a big city, I've been here for a long time, and, like, I know people from all these different backgrounds and jobs and whatever, like, and, like, I'll just, you know, because, like, I've had people, and this is something I've noticed with the viewers, too. People are like, is it weird being recognized? Like, because people are like, oh, hey, you're Joe Hills. And I'm like, I'm recognized all the time by people who don't know my YouTube stuff. Like, I go to the grocery store, and there are kids that are like, hey, there's Corinne's dad. And I see, like, other parents from the school. They're like, oh, hey, Joe. And, you know, I see, like, if you live in a real community and actually, like, engage with people, you're actually more likely to run into people who recognize you when you go out than the opposite. Like, it's just, you know, part of life in a place where you've, like, I've lived here since 2004, you know, I know people, and they know me, and that's cool, you know? But, like, I don't get the impression, like, that's as common an experience these days as maybe it once was for people. I think having a kid definitely helps because, you know, I spend, you know, a lot of time around the other parents and, you know, at school events and stuff. But, so I meet a lot of people through that too. But, yeah. I don't know. Hey, we got another tip rolling in from Amanda. Thank you to Amanda for tipping 20. We were 5 away from the next Face Gamer expansion milestone. Now we are 15 past. So here we go. It's time to expand Joe. Do. Okay. So we are almost out of berries here. We're going to start reading Moby Dick in a minute. I'm just like kind of I'm just enjoying hanging out. Yeah. Like, I mean, like I'm trying to think like how many people have I talked to today who knew my name? Like that I just didn't plan to go see. I just ran into them. And 3. But I also saw two other people that I didn't have the chance to talk to who also know me by name and I know them by name. But, like, I didn't, like, stop and say anything to them. Right? Like, so, like, that's 5 people in one day when I had no coordinated plans to go see anybody or do anything with anybody. Right? I feel like that's, like, a good way to live, you know, in general. Like, you should be part of your local community. Dr. Goofy says, quite a social life. Yeah, I try. Like, I think this is one of the reasons, too, like, Young Wyvern says, any advice on how to start doing that? I mean, find local stuff that, like, if there's local interest groups near you, part of this depends on being in a large enough city for there to be stuff going on, right? But, like, for example, like, if there's, like, local board game nights and programming meetups, like, I used to go to all these PHP programming meetups, and I helped organize the local WordPress conference and stuff like that. Like getting involved in, like, local regular events like that. You know, I know pinball is the thing I always recommend, too, but, you know, like, there's all sorts of ways to, like, engage in your local community, you know? I mean, I think it helps that, like, I went to college here, so I also run into people I went to school with from university who still live here, you know, like, Beautiful Redemption says, I'm going to an art fair tomorrow. I like to talk to other artists and collect their cards. Yeah, I was going to say tabling at events like that is a great way to meet people, too. Like, because, you know, when you have, like, especially at conventions, like a guest badge or like an exhibitor badge, like, people are like, oh, hey, what are you doing? I'm here for work, too. You know, it's a great way to meet people. Neon Wyvern says, it sucks that I commute and therefore spend half my time in a different city than I live. That is a decision that I made early on to avoid. I refuse to work somewhere I don't live. Like, there's been opportunities to move outside of Nashville and save money, and instead I've stayed in the city. So I spend less time commuting. But yeah, that's another way that I meet a lot of people, or that I have met a lot of people, was through working different places and, you know, being active with your local political Twitter and stuff, like the people who comment on city council meetings and write your local newspaper, engage with them on Twitter, come to their events when they give talks, you know, that sort of thing. What's my favorite TCG card and why? I right now, I think it's the Joe Hills Common, because the art on the new Joe Hills Rare isn't finalized, but I think the Joe Hills Common art is going to be unveiled sometime next week. There's been a lot of changes to the marketing calendar for the TCG, as artists get stuff turned in. But we've got some incredibly talented artwork from Luigra coming out very soon. I am super hype about that. Yeah, commuting sucks the life out of you, says Lonely Neuron. Yeah, I mean, I took the bus for a while. At least bus commuting, you have time to write poems and stuff. But driving commuting was just, like, completely soul-sucking for me. I just couldn't do it. I could not do it and maintain the level of creativity and whatnot. It was too much. And, like, I'm not saying, like, oh, it's not for anybody, but it definitely was not for me. Muir Muse says, I took a pay cut just to have a 10-minute commute, and I've never regretted it. That is definitely something I have done, too. I have taken jobs because they, like, help me get to and from my kids' daycare easier. And I saved a lot of time, and I lost a lot of money. Sometimes people ask me, Joe, you're so smart, why aren't you rich? It's like, I make a lot of very non-financially motivated choices. I make a lot of choices around maximizing my artistic output and not maximizing my financial input. And unfortunately, those things tend to compound over time. So it's like, it's like I'm 37 and I still can't afford a starter home, and that's a little disappointing, just objectively speaking. Like, I might not buy my first house until after my kid goes to college, which, like, that there's a line in It's a Wonderful Life about how depressing that is, and I'm like, yup, you nailed it. This is why this movie is good. It stands the test of time. It doesn't matter who I blame, it's still the situation, Zerks. I'm making these choices. I'm setting my own priorities. So, regardless of any systemic problems with our financial system or things like that, I know I could play the game better, and I'm choosing not to play. Because that's, for me, the local maxima. But it's still a little disappointing, It'd be nice to have a house, of my own. It'd be nice to own stuff, like a car, But, like, I could have optimized around that, and I chose not to, and that's the situation I'm in. And so, like, yeah, I could blame the government. There's a lot of things the government could do better. But there's a lot of things I could have done differently, and I made the choices I made, So, whatever. Okay. Let's, start reading. Oh, this is full of coal, and actually, let's do some organization first, because once I get going on this stream, I'm not going to want to organize stuff. Yeah, that's a ban. I don't have time for that sort of... Okay. Where's the tissue box before I get started, too? I have kicked up a lot of dust unpacking things, so my allergies have been acting up a bit. One sec. Pepper Basenji says, I get recognized outside of work, but I work in a library and do craft videos as well. Yeah, see, that's the thing, is like, if you have a position in your community where people recognize you, that's cool. Yeah, Ronnie Quaddle says, as a newish military member who entered when they were older, I basically sold myself to the government to afford all those things you just talked about. I mean, in fairness, I tried that. I had some medical issues, and I was unable to serve after doing a year of ROTC. But, yeah, I tried. It just apparently wasn't for me. They apparently want you to be able to digest food in order to serve as a Marine Corps infantry officer these days. So, yeah, whatever. It's fine. So, yeah, where were we? We were about to read... Okay, we need to move OBS up here. We're about to read Chapter 33, The Specksnider, which means the Chief Harpooner in German. Tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. I need to also pin what we're reading before we get started. We're reading Moby Dick, Chapter 33. Pin. Okay. So, for context, Ishmael has described finally getting to witness Captain Ahab. Seeing Ahab berate Flask, and then gone off on a massive rant where he basically creates a tier list of whales. And now he's like, oh yeah. We're talking about people on a ship. Let me talk about the ship again. So he has already talked about the first through third mates before getting derailed with this Flask thing and the Cetology whale list. Believe me, you can go find the VOD. It's actually a pretty good VOD. Honestly, I'm actually pretty satisfied with how I did the reading, and how I annotated it and explained it. But okay. So chapter 33, though, we're back to talking about the officers of the Pequod. So, chapter 33. The Speck Snyder. Concerning the officers of the whalecraft, this seems as good a place as any to set down a little domestic peculiarity on shipboard, arising from the existence of the harpooner class of officers. A class unknown, of course, in any other marine than in the whale fleet. The large importance attached to the harpooner's vocation is evinced by the fact that originally, in the old Dutch fishery, 2 centuries and more ago, the command of a whale ship was not wholly lodged in the person now called the captain, but was divided between him and an officer called the Speck Snyder. Literally, this word means fat cutter. Usage, however, in time, made it equivalent to chief harpooner. In those days, the captain's authority was restricted to the navigation and general management of the vessel, while over the whale hunting department and all its concerns, the Speck Snyder, or chief harpooner, reigned supreme. In the British Greenland fishery, under the corrupted title of Specksioneer, the old Dutch official is still retained, but his former dignity is sadly abridged. At present, he ranks simply as senior harpooner, and as such is but one of the captain's more inferior subalterns. Nevertheless, as upon the good conduct of the harpooneers, the success of a whaling voyage largely depends, and since in the American fishery he is not only an important officer in the boat, but under certain circumstances, night watches on a whaling ground, the command of the ship's deck is also his. Therefore, the grand political maxim of the sea demands that he should nominally live apart from the men below the mast, and be in some way distinguished as their professional superior, though always by them familiarly regarded as their social equal. Now, the grand distinction drawn between an officer and man at sea is this: the first lives aft, the last forward. Hence, in whale ships and merchantmen alike, the mates have their quarters with the captain. And so, too, in most of the American whalers, the harpooneers are lodged in the after part of the ship. That is to say, they take their meals in the captain's cabin and sleep in a place indirectly communicating with it. Though the long period of a southern whaling voyage, by far the longest of all voyages now or ever made by man, the peculiar perils of it, and the community of interest prevailing among a company, all of whom, high or low, depend for their profits not upon fixed wages, but upon their common luck, together with their common vigilance, intrepidity, and hard work, Though all these things do in some cases tend to beget a less rigorous discipline than in merchantmen generally, yet never mind how much like an old Mesopotamian family these whalemen may, in some primitive instances, live together. For all that, the punctilious externals, at least of the quarterdeck, are seldom materially relaxed, and in no instance done away. Indeed, many are the Nantucket ships in which you will see the skipper parading his quarterdeck in an elated grandeur not surpassed in any military navy, nay, extorting almost as much outward homage as if he wore the imperial purple, and not the shabbiest of pilot cloth. And though of all men the moody captain of the Pequod was the least given to that sort of shallowest assumption, and though the only homage he ever exacted was implicit, instantaneous obedience, though he required no man to remove the shoes from his feet ere stepping on the quarterdeck, and though there were times when, owing to peculiar circumstances connected with events hereafter to be detailed, he addressed them in unusual terms, whether of condensation or in terrorem or otherwise, yet even Captain Ahab was by no means unobservant of the paramount forms and usages of the sea. Now, nor perhaps, will it fail to be eventually perceived that behind those forms and usages, as it were, he sometimes masked himself, incidentally making use of them for other and more private ends than they were legitimately intended to subserve that certain sultanism of his brain which had otherwise, in a good degree, remained unmanifested. Through those forms, that same sultanism became incarnate in an irresistible dictatorship. For be a man's intellectual superiority what it will, it can never assume the practical available supremacy above other men without the aid of some sort of external arts and entrenchments, always in themselves more or less paltry and base. This it is that forever keeps God's two true princes of the empire from men who become famous more through their infinite inferiority to the choice hidden handful of the divine inert than through their undoubted superiority over the dead level of the mass. Such large virtue lurks in these small things when extreme political superstitions invest them, that in some royal instances, even to idiot imbecility, they have imparted potency. But when, as in the case of Nicholas the Tsar, the ringed crown of geographical empire encircles an imperial brain, then the plebeian herds crouch abased before the tremendous centralization. Nor will the tragic dramatist, who would depict mortal indomitableness in its fullest sweep and direct swing, ever forget a hint, incidentally so important in his art, as the one now alluded to. But Ahab, my captain, still moves before me in all his Nantucket grimness and shagginess, and in this episode touching emperors and kings, I must not conceal that I have only to do with a poor old whale hunter like him, and therefore all outward majestical trappings and housings are denied me. Oh, Ahab, What shall be grand in thee? It must needs be plucked at from the skies, and dived in for the deep, and featured in the unbodied air. Thus concludes Chapter 33 of Moby Dick, or The Whale, by Herman Melville. The Speck Snyder. Hope y'all are enjoying this reading of Moby Dick. Just as a reminder, tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. We are currently only $5 away from the next face camera expansion milestone. Progress toward those is cumulative and tracked on the abacus, so you don't have to worry about tipping a whole 20. Every little bit helps. Arizon Rose says, time to start the Audible career. I would love to do that sort of work in the long term. This, I think, is kind of the prerequisite practice. People say, Joe, you could do audiobooks, and I think I could do audiobooks someday. But this is the sort of tangible work required to make that happen. So yeah, we're building toward that sort of thing. I love audiobooks. I listen to them all the time while I'm cooking and cleaning, and I would love to make them for other people. But I am definitely not quite there. I think I'm close. But that's what makes the practice all the more valuable. You know what I mean? Glass and Pain says, well, you're also multitasking. Yeah, you're right. You're right. But the thing is, I can't justify audiobook reading practice as a standalone activity, given how busy my schedule is, right? So this is kind of how I fit it in. Yeah, I'm moderating 3 chats and reading a book and playing Minecraft. But Bo Wolf says, the language in this book is fantastic. Let's see. Nope Queen says, feeling a bit under the weather. Joe's stream is a good thing to have. Hey, glad to help in some small way, Nope Queen. Hope you can get some rest, stay hydrated, and recover. Nope Queen says, the difference between pretty good and really good is a lot of work. Yeah, that's exactly it. I'm not trying to be like, fake humble here. It's like, I see why people are like, Joe, you should do audiobooks. I feel like it's something I could be capable of doing, but I really need to practice voices. I need to I need to see. Part of what I'm doing now when I'm reading these books without pre-reading the chapters is I'm looking for the things that trip me up that I should have pre-read the book for. Because I saw this interview with the guy who read The Sunlit Man, which is a great audiobook. But let me find his name. William Demerit. I don't normally link Amazon stuff. I don't like Amazon. But I'm going to link William Demerit's list of Audible books here. As you can see, he's done some Star Wars stuff, like Star Wars Shadow of the Sith. He's done history books about African Americans fighting in World War II. He's done biography of Michael Jordan. He's got 60 audiobooks, at least, on here. 52 audiobooks on Audible. Like, this guy knows what he's doing, right? William Demerit. I particularly enjoyed his Sunlit Man, which was a novel by Brandon Sanderson that came out in April of this year on Audible. I think it came out a little bit earlier on other services. Apparently I can't link this link in YouTube because it's too long, but okay. Can I link just the Sunlit Man? Oh boy, geez, this is like... Okay, yeah. But yeah, he talked a lot about how important it is for audiobook work to pre-read the book and kind of mark up certain things in advance. And what I'm trying to get a feel for here is by doing it without marking up the book in advance and doing it while distracted, seeing what trips me up, right? So then when I go back and try and start doing this more seriously, I can be looking for the sorts of things that are going to trip me up when I do a pre-read, right? Because I've only really read this and Dracula. That's two things. I've read some short stories too, and read some poetry, but I need to spend some more time doing it live before I can develop kind of that intuition for what I need to do to prepare properly. Because there's some general guidance, but a lot of it is just kind of learning about yourself and your natural reading cadence and stuff like that. Grumpy Bunny, thank you for tipping 45, who says, yay for multitasking. Woo! Okay, so let's see. 5 gets us 1 face camera expansion milestone. 25 gets us a second. 45 gets us a third. We have blown through where the chains would normally come in. I don't know where the chains are. So here we go. Expand Joe. Do. Numero dos. Even larger Joe. Da. Numero tres. At this point, each additional face camera expansion will be accompanied by a corresponding drop in Joe opacity. Bum. Lowering the Joe opacity now to 90%. So thank you very much. I'm realizing that I didn't put the second green screen panel down, so there's just a bunch of random boxes right here. Can I do this without knocking over everything on the table? Yeah, this is... Ta-da! Green screen! Kind of. Yeah, we got some of it. Pinball machine parts, says Arizon Rose. Was that on... That there is definitely a box labeled that somewhere in here. Okay. Oh. Did not mean to throw that. That's going to be a separate problem. Okay. And since we're between chapters anyway, let's go offload this extra coal and copper ore back here. And our main area. Okay, so we're going to put these extra, bum. Okay. So, here we go. Whew. So we're about to start chapter 34. So I need to update the... We are reading Moby... Can't have that headphone cable across the keyboard. We're reading Moby Dick, chapter 34. We're going to update that pinned message here. We're going to update the pinned message down here in YouTube. Okay. Hey, we got a tip rolling in from Anonymous as well for 20, who says, I missed the last 2 weeks of streams while I was on vacation. The quad still hasn't left the docks. No, it finally has left the docks. It finally has left the docks, and Ahab has left his cabin. But either way, that 20 gets us to our next face camera expansion milestone. Here we go. Expand Joe. Do. Lowering the Joe opacity now to 80%. So thank you, Anonymous. Tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. Okay. Ooh. Chapter 34. The cabin table. It is noon, and Doughboy, the steward, thrust in his pale, loaf-of-bread face from the cabin scuttle, announces dinner to his lord and master, who, sitting in the lee quarter-boat, had just been taking an observation of the sun, and is now reckoning the latitude on the smooth, medallion-shaped tablet reserved for that daily purpose on the upper part of his ivory leg. From his complete inattention to the tidings, you would think that moody Ahab had not heard his menial. But presently, catching hold of the mizzen shrouds, he swings himself to the deck, and in an even, unexhilarated voice, saying, "Dinner, Mr. Starbuck," disappears into the cabin. When the last echo of his sultan's step has died away, and Starbuck, for the first emir, has every reason to suppose that he is seated, then Starbuck rouses from his quietude, takes a few turns among the planks, and, after a grave peep into the binnacle, says with some touch of pleasantness, "Dinner, Mr. Stubb," and descends the scuttle. The second emir lounges about the rigging a while, and then, slightly shaking the main brace to see whether it will be all right with that important rope, he likewise takes up the old burden, and with a rapid "Dinner, Mr. Flask," follows after his predecessors. But the third emir, now seeing himself all alone on the quarter-deck, seems to feel relieved from some curious restraint. For, tipping all sorts of knowing winks in all sorts of directions, and kicking off his shoes, he strikes into a sharp but noiseless squall of a hornpipe right over the Grand Turk's head, and then, by a dexterous slide, pitching his cap up into the mizzen-top for a shelf, he goes down rollicking, so far, at least, as he remains visible from the deck, reversing all other processions by bringing up the rear with music. But, ere stepping into the cabin doorway below, he pauses, ships a new face altogether, and then, independent, hilarious little Flask enters Captain Ahab's presence in the character of Objectus, or the slave. It is not the least among the strange things bred by the intense artificialness of sea usages that while in the open air of the deck, some officers will, upon provocation, bear themselves boldly and defyingly enough toward their commander, yet 10 to 1 let those very officers the next moment go down to their customary dinner in that same commander's cabin, and straightway their inoffensive, not to say deprecatory, and humble air towards him as he sits at the head of the table. This is marvelous. Sometimes most comical. Wherefore this difference? A problem? Perhaps not. To have been Belshazzar, king of Babylon, and to have been Belshazzar, not haughtily but courteously, therein certainly must have been some touch of mundane grandeur. But he who in the rightly regal and intelligent spirit presides over his own private dinner table of invited guests, That man's unchallenged power and dominion of individual influence for the time, that man's royalty of state transcends Belshazzar's. For Belshazzar was not the greatest. Who has but once dined with his friends and tasted what it is to be Caesar? It is a witchery of social czarship which there is no withstanding. Now, if to this consideration you superadd the official supremacy of a shipmaster, then, by inference, you will derive the cause of that peculiarity of sea life just mentioned. Over his ivory inlaid table, Ahab presided like a mute, maned sea lion. On the white coral beach, surrounded by his warlike, but still deferential cubs. In his own proper turn, each officer waited to be served. They were as little children before Ahab. And yet, in Ahab, there seemed not to lurk the smallest social arrogance. With one mind, their intent eyes all fastened upon the old man's knife. As he carved the chief dinner before him, I do not suppose that for the world they would have profaned that moment with the slightest observation, even upon so neutral a topic as the weather. No. And when reaching out his knife and fork, between which the slice of beef was locked, Ahab thereby motioned Starbuck's plate toward him. The mate retrieved his meat as though receiving alms, and cut it tenderly, and a little started it. Perchance the knife grazed against the plate, and chewed it noiselessly, and swallowed it, not without circumspection. For, like the coronation banquet at Frankfurt, where the German emperor profoundly dines with the 7 imperial electors, so these cabin meals were somehow solemn meals, eaten in awful silence. And yet, at table, old Ahab forbade not conversation. Only he himself was dumb. What a relief it was to choking Stubb when a rat made a poor sudden racket in the hold below. And poor little Flask, he was the youngest son and the little boy of this weary family party. His were the shin bones of the saline beef. His would have been the drumsticks. For Flask to have presumed to help himself, this must have seemed to him tantamount to larceny in the first degree. Had he helped himself at that table, doubtless never more would he have been able to hold his head up in this honest world. Nevertheless, strange to say, Ahab never forbade him. And had Flask helped himself, the chances were Ahab had never so much as noticed it. Least of all did Flask presume to help himself to butter. Whether he thought the owners of the ship denied it to him, on account of its clotting his clear, sunny complexion, or whether he deemed that, on so long a voyage in marketless waters, butter was at a premium, and therefore was not to him a subaltern. However it was, Flask, alas, was a butterless man. Another thing. Flask was the last person down at dinner, and Flask is the first man up. Consider. For hereby, Flask's dinner was badly jammed in point of time. Starbuck and Stubb both had the start of him. And yet, they also had the privilege of lounging in the rear. If Stubb, even, who is but a peg higher than Flask, happens to have but a small appetite, and soon shows symptoms of concluding his repast. Then Flask must bestir himself. He will not get more than 3 mouthfuls that day, for it is against holy usage for Stubb to precede Flask to the deck. Therefore it was that Flask once admitted in private that ever since he had risen to the dignity of an officer, from that moment he had never known what it was to be otherwise than hungry, more or less. For what he ate did not so much relieve his hunger as keep it immortal in him. Peace and satisfaction, thought Flask, have forever departed from my stomach. I am an officer, but how I wish I could fish a bit of old-fashioned beef in the forecastle, as I used to when I was before the mast. There's the fruits of promotion now. There's the vanity of glory. There's the insanity of life. Besides, if it were so that any mere sailor of the Pequod had a grudge against Flask, in Flask's official capacity, all that sailor had to do, in order to obtain ample vengeance, was go aft at dinner time and peep at Flask through the cabin skylight, sitting, silly and dumbfoundered, before awful Ahab. Now, Ahab and his 3 mates formed what could be called the first table in the Pequod's cabin. After their departure, taking place in an inverted order to their arrival, the canvas cloth was cleared, or rather was restored to some hurried order by the pallid steward. And then the 3 harpooneers were bidden to the feast, they being the residuary legatees. They made a sort of temporary servants' hall of the high and mighty captain's cabin. In strange contrast to the hardly tolerable constraint and nameless invisible domineerings of the captain's table was the entire carefree license and ease, the almost frantic democracy of those inferior fellows, the harpooneers. While their masters, the mates, seemed afraid of the sound of the hinges of their own jaws, the harpooneers chewed their food with such relish that there was report to it. They dined like lords. They filled their bellies like Indian ships all day loading with spices. Such portentous appetites had Queequeg and Tashtego that to fill out the vacancies made by the previous repast, often the pale doughboy was fain to bring out a great barren of salt junk, seemingly quarried out of solid ox. And, if he were not lively about it, if he did not go with a nimble hop, skip, and jump, then Tashtego had an ungentlemanly way of accelerating him by darting a fork at his back, harpoon-wise. And once, Daggoo, seized with a sudden humor, assisted Doughboy's memory by snatching him up bodily and thrusting his head into a great empty wooden trencher, while Tashtego, knife in hand, began laying out the circle preliminary to scalping him. He was naturally a very nervous, shuddering sort of little fellow, this bread-faced steward, the progeny of a bankrupt baker and a hospital nurse, And what with the standing spectacle of the black terrific Ahab, and the periodical tumultuous visages of these three savages, Doughboy's whole life was one continuous lip quiver. Commonly, after seeing the harpooneers furnished with all the things they demanded, he would escape from their clutches into his little pantry adjoining, and fearfully peep out at them through the blinds of its door till all was over. It was a sight to see Queequeg seated over against Tashtego, opposing his filed teeth to the Indians. Crosswise to them, Daggoo, seated on the floor, for a bench would have brought his hearse-plumed head to the low car lines, at every motion of his colossal limbs making the low cabin framework to shake, as when an African elephant goes passenger in a ship. But for all this, the great man was wonderfully abstemious, if not to say dainty. It seemed hardly possible that by such comparatively small mouthfuls he could keep up the vitality diffused through so broad, baronial, and superb a person. But doubtless this noble savage fed strong and drank deep of the abounding element of air, and through his dilated nostrils snuffed in the sublime life of worlds. Not by beef or by bread are giants made or nourished, but Queequeg, he had a mortal, barbaric smack in the lip in eating, an ugly sound enough, so much so that the trembling doughboy almost looked to see whether any marks of teeth lurked in his own arms. But when he would hear Tashtego singing out for him to produce himself, that his bones might be picked, the simple-witted steward all but shattered the crockery hanging round him in the pantry by his sudden fits. Nor did the whetstone which the harpooneers carried in their pockets for their lances and other weapons, and with which whetstones at dinner they would ostentatiously sharpen their knives, that grating sound did not at all tend to tranquilize poor doughboy. He could forget that in his island days... How could he forget that in his island days, Queequeg, for one, must certainly have been guilty of some murderous convivial indiscretions? Alas, doughboy, hard fares the white waiter who waits upon cannibals. Not a napkin should he carry on his arm, but a buckler. In good time, though, to his great delight, the three sea-salt warriors would rise and depart, to his credulous, fable-mongering ears, all their martial bones jingling in them at every step, like Moorish scimitars in scabbards. But though these barbarians dined in the cabin, and nominally lived there, still, being anything but sedentary in their habits, they were scarcely ever in it except at mealtimes, and just before sleeping time, when they passed through it to their own peculiar quarters. In this one matter, Ahab seemed no exception to most American whale captains, who, as a set, rather inclined to the opinion that by rights the ship's cabin belongs to them, and that it is by courtesy alone that anybody else is at any time permitted there, so that, in real truth, the mates and harpooneers of the Pequod might more properly be said to have lived out of the cabin than in it. For when they did enter it, it was something as a street door enters a house, turning inwards for a moment, only to be turned out the next, and as a permanent thing, residing in the open air. Nor did they lose much hereby. In the cabin, there was no companionship. Socially, Ahab was inaccessible. Though nominally included in the census of Christendom, he was still an alien to it. He lived in the world, as the last of the grizzly bears lived in settled Missouri, and when spring and summer had departed, that wild Logan of the woods burying himself in the hollow of a tree, lived out the winters there, sucking his own paws. So, in his inclement, howling old age, Ahab's soul shut up in the carved trunk of his body, there fed upon the sullen paws of doom. Thus concludes chapter 34 of Moby Dick, or The Whale, by Herman Melville. The Captain Table. Sorry, the Cabin Table. So yeah, we're learning a lot about naval customs, about the differentiation between the officers and the other men on the ship here. Seeing how the harpooneers are privileged below the other officers in some ways and above them because they're not important enough to have to dine with the captain and deal with his expected decorum. Or their expectations of his decorum. I rather think the harpooneers would eat the same if they were eating with the captain as if they were not. They seem like the sorts of folks who know how they want to live their lives. They're very good at one particular technical skill, harpooning, to the degree that they don't have to worry about social norms. You'll see this in other media, like, for example, the show House MD. If you're good enough at what you do, you don't have to care about the boss. Like, to some degree, the leadership and logistical tasks of the other officers are more trainable than the harpooneers. Because the harpooneers have to be incredibly precise javelin throwers, basically. And that is a hard skill to teach, right? The whaling vessel absolutely depends on the talent of the harpooneers. Like, they're, as they pointed out earlier, they're not getting paid wages. They're getting paid a share of the profits. And a successful whaling trip is 100% dependent on having harpooneers who can do their incredibly specific task incredibly accurately. It's not just how far can you throw this javelin. It's how far can you throw this javelin accurately, right? Like, Stubb and Flask could be replaced by a dozen other guys who know how to run a ship. There's all sorts of ships. Plenty of ships in this time period, right? Those guys are worried about their jobs. They're worried about decorum. The harpooneers are basically rock stars, where they can get away with breaking social convention because they're doing the thing that nobody else can do. They're naturally gifted with certain degrees of strong eyesight, especially, you know, you have to have incredibly good eyesight. You have to have incredibly good, like, intuition about space. And about, you have to be physically strong. It's not a combination that comes along every day. You know, if you look at how excited the other two captains were when Queequeg showed up, where they're like, hire that man right now, when he was able to, like, throw the harpoon at a spot on the dock a long way, right? That, you know, it's a different class of employment. These other guys are the managers. You know, Stubb and Flask and Starbuck. They're the managers. And management can always be replaced. But the talent, it's a little bit harder. Nope, Queen says the medical malpractice show. Yeah, I'm not saying that House MD is a show about a good person. I'm saying it's a show about a person who is good enough at his job that he goes out of his way to enjoy breaking social conventions. So, the next chapter, chapter 35, is about the masthead. Chapter 36 and 37 are about Ahab stepping out on deck. So, I feel like the chapter about the masthead sets the stage for the next 2 chapters. So, we're going to save those for next week. We've hit the 90-minute mark here. And we got 2 pretty decent chapters in. We kind of vary the number of chapters we read based on the their length and kind of how... Jubali says, how many pages is a chapter? Unlike Dracula, which had really consistent chapters. With Dracula, we could read 1 chapter a week, and that was just right. With this, it's all over the place. I feel like those 2 chapters were about right for tonight's stream, especially because the next 3 chapters are a logical group, and there's no way that we're going to read 3 more chapters tonight. But we could read those 3 chapters next week and have a good, full kind of bit of the story. So we're going to keep hostile creatures off while we go fix our pick here. But yeah, what did y'all think of... You feel like you're getting a better sense of what life on a whale ship is like? We haven't talked about how Ishmael eats, or the crew, really. We're kind of... right now kind of setting the stage for how the leadership lives and works. Jubali says, I had a book once where the first 3 chapters were 10 pages, then 30 pages, then 140 pages. Ariothalium says, I'm craving butter. Yeah, I get that. And that's my review. Winfrost says, I once read a book where 1 chapter is literally 4 words. Maroney says, this ship makes me want to travel back in time and sign up on a whaling ship. I mean, I definitely find the idea appealing of signing up for a job where you can't spend money. And then you go away and you come back, right? That was one of the things that was kind of appealing to me when I was considering becoming a military officer in the first place. Was I was like, you know, if I'm not married, I can just live on base or whatever. And then if I get deployed, it's like, you know, I'm not somebody who like gambles or spends a lot of money on myself. I could just be saving a ton of money. Like if I got put on a ship in the Mediterranean with a platoon, just in case we need to deploy somewhere, you know, for a natural disaster or whatever, it's like, okay, you know, that's 11 to 13 months of savings that, like, whatever, like, I really think there is something appealing about a job where you just go to... Oh, I forgot to put all these... I didn't fill my inventory, so I picked up 1,000,000 ender pearls. Okay. Somebody said, did anybody notice his experience isn't going up, but he's collecting it? Yeah, that means that the experience was going into repairing the mending tools. That was why we actually went over there. Boom, ba dum boom, dun dun dun, da da da. Boom, ba dum ba da, dun dun dun, da da da. Boom, 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 boom. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. We're actually making good progress on this. Mr. Hardluck, welcome. Hope you're doing well. Dun 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 dun. Bum 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 bum. Dun 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 dun. Oh no, I'm buried. I think Scar is a little bit upset that my shop is still a hole. Do you think we should... Maybe we should do something about that. I try not to, like, do active recording stuff on the Moby Dick stream, but, like, let's put that in for tomorrow. Tomorrow's stream, you guys, remind me. Y'all need to remind me tomorrow. We're gonna go deal with the wool shop and the name tag shop. That's on the agenda. Okay. As we wind down for the evening, let's kind of have a chill conclusion to the stream. We're just collecting some blocks, breaking some rocks, that sort of thing. Just as a reminder, this is a viewer-supported stream. Tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. I appreciate y'all's support as I experiment with different things, pushing myself in new ways. Practicing reading books aloud is something that I really want to do, but it's hard to find the time. And honestly, I think it's important having an audience to read to while I practice. I think it helps me get in the right mindset, thinking about how y'all are going to, like, I don't know. I always feel like I record kind of more organically when I've got people listening to me. And so I feel like it's important for me to do this sort of practice with folks around. So yeah, thank you all so much for just hanging out and being here, even if you can't support the show financially. At the same time, moving is expensive. I've been paying a lot of bills lately. It's like, oh, why is my electricity bill so high? Oh yeah, I had a transfer fee. Why is this bill so high? Oh yeah, I had a transfer fee. So yeah, a lot of extra bills, a lot of extra transfer fees. Anything that y'all want to throw in would be deeply timely and appreciated. So, Iconic Anemone says, the puppy likes watching fireworks better than being inside and hearing them. I think, yeah, my fiance said that about their cats being, the cats don't like fireworks unless they can see them. If the cats can see the fireworks, they're just like, oh, okay, cool, that's what's making that noise. But, like, if they can only hear them, they're like, what the heck is that? And they, like, start freaking out, you know? So it's like, take the cats to the window, show them the fireworks type of thing. Lone Courier tips 5 and says, have 5 on me toward moving. Thank you very much, Lone Courier. That puts us now 15 away from the next face camera expansion milestone. Appreciate your support of the show. Yeah. Yeah, like, animals aren't stupid. They just don't always have the experience we do, right? And so, like, connecting the dots on, like, I mean, I will say personally for me, if I hear a noise that might be fireworks, I'm like, is that fireworks or gunshots? If I can see the fireworks, I feel a lot better. I don't blame animals for having a similar response. You know, that's just how it is. Okay, let's go up here. Let's knock out this thing at least before we wrap up. Do-do-do, do-do-do-do, do-do-do, do-do-do-do. Have a good night, Lone Courier. Lay your head down and dream. I can't play the outro music because we don't want to risk the Moby Dick streams getting copyright struck, but the city is bright, but the stars keep growing dimmer. The dishwasher runs, then you find forks from dinner. Killing lights, charging phones, setting alarms to make their tones. Winding down, closing blinds, love rest for tomorrow when there's time. Lay your head down and dream. Lay your head down and dream. Just let your mind float downstream, sprawled out in a moonbeam. Lay your head down and dream. Sleep well, Lone Courier. Okay. This is getting done. Slowly but surely. We're undermining the chicken. Slowly but surely. It's hitting sea level soon. Going, why did I decide to live atop this mountaintop? Oh, why didn't I live on the ground where chickens normally are found? So anybody else have any last-minute thoughts about Moby Dick before we wrap up? Now's the time to get them off your chest. Sometimes it takes a minute to let things kind of sink in. But it's a great opportunity to chat with the folks who just heard the same thing you did. I feel like these communal readings are a good opportunity for kind of a book club experience of one sort or another. Normally a book club would be led by somebody who's a little bit more knowledgeable about the book. Oh, we are not picking up more blocks at this point. Fireworks. Fireworks. Okay. Maroney says, I like the detail that goes into the book, but I'm not sure I'd be able to get through a book like this myself. Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is, there's a lot of stuff that's hard to get through by yourself. That's part of the reason we teach students in groups, right? Like, that's why people take classes on things as, like, a group thing. Like, some stuff, like guitar instruction, is going to be one-on-one. But a lot of classes, you know, you benefit from learning about them or experiencing them with other people around you and seeing what questions they ask, right? Or seeing how they formulate their thoughts and opinions, you know? Like, not everything... Like, there are definitely things where a one-on-one tutor makes sense. Like I said, guitar, learning, you know, certain types of things with musical instruments. But, like, with literature, with drama, with language, I feel like there's a huge advantage to being in a group of people when you experience something like this. Ariathalium says, I'm not smart enough to think of anything interesting to say about the book. That's okay. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just letting people know that now is a good time to do it before we wrap up. Giving tips a minute to roll in. Violet Rose says, I came to the stream too late. Sorry, Violet Rose. Yeah, we already read our chapters for today. That's fair. It'll be in the VOD if you want to catch it later. Yeah, Pepper Basenji, reading old books with outdated language, you have to make certain choices about whether or not you want to modernize things. I'm not super experienced at doing that, so there's room for improvement there. But, yeah. Somehow we have filled our inventory again. Away we go. More stone. Somebody asked earlier if Ethos paid me diamonds for all the stone yet. Well, I'm actually taking out frog lights from his shop at this point. Okay. Trevor says, dang, I just missed it too, but I heard the word guitar. Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about guitar lessons lately because my daughter got a guitar as a gift from a friend of the family for finishing elementary school. She had been saving toward buying a guitar, but since a friend of the family bought her the guitar, she was able to use that money toward buying a case and some books. And before she went to her mom's for the summer, I took her to a couple of live shows where she could like see. There's a lot of small shows around Nashville like every night, right? So I was able to take her to a few gigs where she could like see the guitarist's hands. Like we were close enough, you know, standing somewhere that she could see the guitarist's hands and be like, okay, I can see when he's playing notes versus chords. I can see what he's doing. I couldn't do it yet, but like she was getting enough practice based on just the book stuff that she kind of started to be able to appreciate and interpret what actual guitarists or experienced guitarists could do, as they did it, which is cool. But yeah, I think it's really motivating for a kid to get to see like, oh, hey, if I practice this, then, I can play a random show on the back patio of some restaurant or whatever, and like 3 people will show up and hang out. Like, like showing kids that it's cool to be somebody who plays an instrument behind a restaurant sometimes, and like is important, because a lot of times all they see is Taylor Swift. And realistically, Taylor Swift's dad was an investment banker who could put a lot of money toward her career. I don't have. Unrelated note, tips are welcome via paypal.me/Joe Hills and YouTube Super Chat. But I don't have investment banker money, right? Like, it's like, look, here are people who play guitar and have fun with it, even though their dads made like the amount of money I make. Are there guitars in Moby Dick, says Hobie Buck. Okay, I think it's funny that Hobie Buck and Moby Dick are kind of similar. The boss says you've been setting up the stream for almost 2 hours. Yeah, I forgot to take that down. It's fine. We're wrapping up soon. But like, it's showing my daughter like, hey, because like she doesn't want to be a guitarist for a living. She just wants to like play guitar and have fun doing shows sometimes, right? One day, And it's like, okay, well, here's what that looks like. Here's people that we know that have day jobs that like, because that's the other thing about living in Nashville is we know a bunch of people who are in bands and like they have day jobs, but then they'll occasionally just do a gig on the patio behind a restaurant, And so we can just go to stuff like that, and she can see like, oh, hey, there's those people we know. They're hanging out and playing a show. That's cool, That's a cool hobby for, somebody to want to have one day, or to work toward. It's motivating, I think, for the kid to get to see that. It's like, you don't have to be a rock star to enjoy this. You can say, I want to hang out with my friends, and then have other friends come see us play, right? So, Maroney says, my dad's first job was playing accordion at an Italian restaurant, and to this day still plays gigs on the side. Yeah, one of my friends is a radiologist, and she plays accordion at like random stuff like farmers markets and things like that. And she's actually going to be playing at PlayOnCon. If any of y'all are going to be at PlayOnCon, I don't know if Nola's in the chat. I know Nola and Yurgi are going to be at PlayOnCon this year. Super excited to see y'all there. But yeah, we need to go see some of my friends play some live music. They're going to be opening for Professor Shy Guy, which is pretty awesome. I'm very hyped for that. I helped name their band. Because I didn't come up with the name. I came up with something very close to the name. They didn't like my name. I'm kind of disappointed they didn't like my name, because I think my name is a little better than what they went with. But, so the bassist in the band is like, I want to name it something with music in it, but not all of us are from Music City. And I'm like, yeah, if not everybody's from Music City, then you can't use the word music in the name. It just needs to be called Sparkling Sound. And he's like, that's interesting. And he ended up being like, eventually they decided to name the band Sparkling Noise. And I'm like, I like Sparkling Sound better. And they're like, no, Sparkling Sound sounds too good. We need something that sounds worse to let people know what to expect. So yeah, Sparkling Noise is going to be playing at PlayOnCon. So yeah, check them out. They're opening for I've been talking too long. They're going to be opening for Professor Shy Guy in the pavilion So check that out. Becca says, what are you building? I am building a 1-to-1 scale model of the Bell Laboratories Research and Development Campus from Homedale, New Jersey. I'm going to post a link to that in both chats here. Whew, okay. I don't think I officially said last call for tips. So I'm going to do official last call for tips as well. Tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. We're wrapping up on the half hour. Trevor says, that's cool. Guitar is an amazing instrument. I hope your daughter has a great guitar journey. Yeah, I'm hoping so too. We know a lot of talented folks who are really good at guitar. The actual problem I'm running into is all of the people I know are such good guitarists. I'm like, so what would you charge for a lesson? And then they give me a number, and I'm like, okay. I feel like realistically what I'm going to end up having to do is go with like some sort of like entry level thing just for her to start like learning scales and like the fundamentals and come back to my talented friends in a year or two. Because it's just like, you guys are too good for me to afford you to teach her the basics. Like, does that make any sense? It's just like... It's like, down the line, it would be super great for her to have such amazing guitarists teaching her. But right now, this is like paying an electrician to come in and rewire my apartment every month. Like, yeah, you're at a different tier. Pepper says, was she able to take her guitar with her? No, but, like, her mom tends to buy her... And, like, whenever her mom hears that I do something nice for my daughter, her mom tends to go and buy her the thing with her new husband's money or whatever. So it's like, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, she heard that I was taking my daughter to pinball tournaments, and then they bought her 2 pinball machines. Which is not cheap. I can't afford part of 1 pinball machine. So, yeah, when they heard that she got a guitar here, they're like, we'll make sure you have access to a guitar. I was like, I believe it. So, I don't know. This is one of those things, like, I've talked to Cleo about this. I was like, some parents would feel, like, annoyed if their former spouse was being competitive with them in this way. But it's like, you know, I got my daughter into... I paid for my daughter to go to space camp. And then her mom was immediately like, well, fine, we're going to send you to robotics camp. And I'm just like, oh, wow. So, like, for the cost of 1 space camp, my daughter is getting both space camp and robotics camp. Like, I don't mind somebody being competitive with me if it only helps my kid, right? Like, it's one of those things where it's like every dollar that I spend on my daughter ends up being like bizarrely matched. And like, I can't be upset or offended by it. I'm just like, wow, what a force multiplier. Everything that I do for my kid is multiplied. And so yeah, it's buy one get one free. So yeah, it's like, it's nice. Yeah. Karen tips 10 and says, I am also not an investment banker, but I enjoy supporting the stream. Thank you, Karen. That puts us now 5 away from the next face camera expansion milestone. That is probably our last tip of the stream. I'll give it another minute or so just in case. Hobie Buck says, that's the right mindset, Joe. The kid matters the most. Exactly. It's like, you know what? If I tried to tell her mom how to spend money on our daughter, I wouldn't get through to her. But I just do what I think is right, and then somebody else spends extra money on my kid. Okay. That's fine. I was going to do what I thought was right anyway. It's nice having a force multiplier there, right? You know, whatever. Like, what can you do? Why be upset about that, right? So, anyway, yeah. La da 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 da. I think it helps too that my kid hasn't noticed this yet, so she's not like using this to take advantage of either of us. I think if she noticed and started being obnoxious about it, then we would have a different problem. But like, she's just like, oh, it's nice that both of my parents want to help. She's not like using it to like pit us against each other or anything. But, like, I'm glad she has a pinball machine or two to practice on when she's with her mom. That's great. She made it to women's state last year in her first year of playing tournament pinball. And, you know, that's pretty good. It's pretty good. I'm very proud of my kid. I feel like we're not picking up any of these blocks. I am not hearing block pickup sounds. It's a little disturbing. Yeah, okay. How's my pinball machine progress? That has been on hold while I get the new garage in order. I started on that before I knew that we were moving. And so, yeah, it's stalled since the move. The new setup in the... Okay, so I'm streaming out of a garage now, so I can actually, like, buy proper tools and have ventilation for woodworking and stuff. But the problem is, with the move, the garage is jammed with a bunch of boxes and furniture and stuff that I still have to get sorted and assemble and all sorts of other stuff. So, we have a really solid setup for moving forward, but... We're better off than we were, but we're not making a lot of progress directly. Like, the playfield is still in a box. But, okay. As I said, we're going to wrap up on the half hour. I just wanted to give a few extra minutes to make sure any tips that rolled in, folks got thanked for. Oh, boy. Let me see who is streaming this evening. Well, it looks like Spicy Haminator is reviewing the patch notes for Minecraft 1.21. The title of the stream is Talking and Chilling First, Minecraft Later. So, yeah. Looks like Spicy Haminator is going to be doing some fun Minecraft stuff. Hope y'all head over there and enjoy it. Our raid message is, howdy y'all, Joe Hill's raid here. Thank y'all so much for hanging out with me tonight. I had a great time practicing my reading, spending time with y'all, hearing what you thought about the book. Until next time, y'all, this is Joe Hills from Nashville, Tennessee. Keep adventuring. Stop streaming, stopping the stream.